All right, howdy folks. Welcome back to Top Comics Pressing. We're going to kick off a case study here on a true Silver Age Grail from Marvel Comics. So this is X-Men #1, epic Stan Lee story, of course, kicking off one of the most beloved team appearances of all times, that is the X-Men. Jack Kirby, cover and art. Incredibly awesome set of first appearances, including all of the original X-Men and their nemesis Magneto, who is one of my personal favorite Marvel villains slash heroes slash characters. And this one is coming to us CGC graded, a 4.0 off-white pages. And this one, anytime you're considering touching a comic like this, I think it's very important to think about it and check and think about it, and then take the comic and put it on a shelf for several days and come back and reevaluate. Obviously, there are a lot of things that can go wrong when handling comics, even just incidental damages. But especially for big grails like this, it's important to carefully weigh that risk-reward ratio. And I know some people are all about rolling the dice. I personally am rather conservative about the cracks. It takes a lot of money and time to do the cleaning and pressing, as well as the CGC grading and the shipping. And there's just so many things that can go wrong. This one, though, I do think is worth at least giving an attempt at. And the reason for that is if you grab that CGC serial number there, we can see that the grader notes say foreign substance, center front cover, and we can see that it's right up here in the Magneto bubble. I don't know what this is, but we can try to dry clean it and maybe take a little Q-tip that's damp and roll it on there and see if we can get some of that off. There's a little bit more of it down here. And yeah, so I think that might have some opportunity to fix. I don't know if we'll be able to get it all or not, particularly if it's soaked into the fibers. And this one I don't think is a really good bled candidate or a blue LED candidate for a couple of reasons. Next is, in the grader notes, is Marvel chipping, and you can see that it looks like these little tears all the way down the right front edge, tears up there, down. Now, the good news about Marvel chipping is that CGC is very forgiving on that because it was a manufacturing thing. They were so broke that they didn't change the blades used to cut the comics. And so a lot of Silver Age books, especially the very, very early kind of 1961 through 1963 Marvel books, have that Marvel chipping. And CGC is pretty forgiving on it, up to maybe a 7.0 copy. And so I don't think that Marvel chipping, while it's listed, it's not really significantly contributing to the grade of 4.0. Next up is fingerprints on cover, and it's unclear to me if this is the foreign substance or if that's the fingerprint, or if there's something else going on. There is some more on the back here, so if we look, we can see that there's a bunch of schmutzies down here. Some of this is really light foxing. In general, though, it looks pretty good all the way around. If we evaluate, there might be the shred of a spine split starting right down here. But we can see that for the most part, there's some creasing. Now, what's really tragic is I don't know if this happened in the slabbing process or if it was like that before it went to go get slabbed, but we can try to fold that back over. I give it 50-50 odds that chip or that piece just comes loose. And so we're going to have to be very careful. What I'm going to do is get a Q-tip, get it wet, roll it on there to kind of loosen up the fibers, transferring some but not a lot of moisture, and then roll it back over. The last note on the CGC grade is moderate cover creasing. Now that's important because cover creasing, it doesn't take much to knock you from, let's say, a 9.8 down to an 8.5 or a 9.0 copy. But once you start getting in the mid-ranges, there's more forgiveness with how much creasing there is. And remember, it is the total length of all the creasing across the cover. And so we want to look at stuff like this is going to get counted as one line, then 2 lines, and then a couple of lines, and then there's going to be a reader's crease all the way down here. Now that reader creasing will probably limit you to maybe a 6.0 copy, but that's not too bad. What I'm going to scan for are really large creases. So right here we have a crease going this way and a crease going this way, and so that'll get added in there. And if we look, this is kind of a spider web crease is going to get hit 3 times. So 1, 2, actually 4 times, 3, 4. So there's going to be a bunch there. There's a little bit more right by Iceman. And then the corner is going to have a whole bunch. And then there's going to be a little bit more down here. So overall, there is a moderate amount of cover creasing, but thankfully none of them are the huge, long diagonal creases, at least as far as I can tell. And if I look at it, I don't think that this copy was dry cleaned. So there's some dirt in here that's quite easily visible. You know, there's some dirt up in here. It's unclear if all of this is dirt or if that was ink that was transferred. So again, if you have a stack of comic books and they were in, let's say, a basement where it got a little humid, sometimes they stick, and when you peel them apart, you can transfer ink to them. And this pattern up in here almost looks like ink transferred from a different comic. So we can try to dry clean that. I'm not going to push that too much, but certainly we can try to hit that foreign substance. You know, you can see a little bit more of it in the E for Magneto. And, you know, up in here, you can tell that there's some surface dirt that wasn't really dry cleaned off. And so we're going to try to give that our best due. The owner for this, I think, has really reasonable expectations. They're hoping to get it to a 4.5. And I think that that might be achievable. The other thing that I noticed when looking at this is if you look at it through the glare, you can see that there's a lot of really, really light rippling in it. And so this book was ostensibly flat, but I think it just could benefit from a true press. You know, I don't know if it was pressed. Maybe it was pressed by somebody that wasn't using humidity in their process. But when I look at the cover, there's nothing major. But, you know, right here on Cyclops, for instance, you know, you can see kind of a big line through there. And there's a bunch more down here by, you know, kind of the red on the edge as you see it there. So, you know, there's a lot of those really, really light finger bends. You can see it kind of here through the X. And so, you know, just trying to hit some of those with a solid press. So I think that this one has a shot at what I would call a very modest bump, and I think it might be worth rolling the dice. Yeah, there's a little bit more of that really light bending there, kind of on, you can see it on the M and the E and X-Men. So this one, after I think a very careful evaluation, I would put in the it might be worth risking category. The other thing is, you know, I noted that there might be a very, very small spine split down here, but the rest of the spine looks okay, and the staple has a little bit of a tear there, but it is thankfully on the side of the comic, as is this one. To me, the most dangerous spot for those staples is when they're kind of on a 45. They're not quite on the side, and they're not quite top down, but they're kind of angled out. And this one, I think, has the staples really nicely centered on the sides, and so I think it might be worth it. So, all right, I'm going to stop rambling here, and let's get cracking. All right, after one of probably the longest intros here on the channel, I'm just going to try to get my fingers under here and see if I can bust a post. There we go. Do have my screwdriver handy. I wanted to cheat a little bit. The split we were going for. Usually those light bends and stuff are going to be more obvious as we get this thing closer to coming out of the slab. Alright, and that is what you kind of want to try to avoid, is splintering into the slab. So we're going to try to go around the long way here. Be good. So I don't know. Carefully put that down. Pull out that label. All right. Now, when thinking about slicing this through again, we're going to want a nice big border, and this one's an easy choice because it has that support that CGC put in there to help hold the comic on the side to keep it from rattling around. So we're just going to slice right through that nice big border. Go. Put some scissor slits in there. sport. All right, get some gloves on. Pull this away. Let's take a peek here then at this true piece of Marvel history. Fortunate enough to have a copy. You can see all the dirt on the side of the pages. We'll try to clean that up. I would call that true off-white pages. 2, 3. So there, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 as well. 8, 9, 10, 11. There's the microchamber paper I'm looking for. 12, 13, 14, that's 15. That's not the right number. Let's try going this way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. Just had 2 of them stuck together. 16 is the appropriate number, so we're happy with that. And we'll just take a minute here to appreciate the grandeur of the original X-Men. Cyclops with his visor, Jean Grey joining the team. Professor X was not really the nicest to her here, we'll say. So thankfully the team has evolved a little bit. And then, of course, the first story kind of mimics the Cuban Missile Crisis with Magneto. Enter one of the greatest Marvel characters of all time. And with that, I'm going to take some before pictures of this, and we'll come on back for a dry clean. All right, here we are with this copy of X-Men #1. And let's just start dry cleaning here along the spine. I've got my click eraser, and I'm just using very, very minimal, if any, pressure. I did clean off the full eraser tip beforehand and kind of molded it on the tape I have hanging out. Obviously, there's creasing along the spine here, so I want to be really diligent with it. Very, very careful. I'm not using any downward pressure. I'm just using the side-to-side motion. And with this white cover, especially with all the gunk on it, this is going to be a long dry clean. So if it bores you, feel free to fast forward in the video. Should figure out how to get some circus montage music and upload this at like 2x speed. I just feel like that might be disingenuous. So and that little bit there, I don't want to put more pressure, particularly because it's by the staple, but I do want to get that black crud off, so I'm going to go to my magic eraser here. I think that's about all I'm going to do. Whatever's left there, we're going to leave. Remember, dry cleaning is not a 100% sport. Going to aim for that 95, 98, 99% threshold. Whatever doesn't go, if you force it or push it, you'll probably regret it. Alright, and I have less confidence in the goobies here by Magneto than I did beforehand. And again, I don't have to be super careful about going over the ink as long as you're not applying pressure. If you apply pressure, you're going to have a bad day. You will rub color and ink then, but you can glide across it just fine. This has so many nice white patches here. And you can just see all the crud that's coming off, so I'm just going to rub that on the little piece of tape I have off camera. Just to try to get the eraser as white as possible so that I can see kind of what's coming off. I have a feeling whatever this foreign substance is either going to be sugar candy based and it'll come right off when we hit it with water, or it's going to be oil grease based and it ain't going to go nowhere. So I'll hold you in anticipation. I'm going to do all the other dry cleaning first, and then we'll come back to that. Nice little space on ice, man. And there's definitely plenty of wrinkles on this one to press out, so I think the intuition about those light bends and stuff being there, and maybe this one not being truly worked on before it got slabbed the first time, is accurate. I'll put it in the raking glare here, but when I flip it over so that you can kind of see what I mean. Now this we're going to try to have to roll back over. There's a little piece there, and again with the dry cleaning, be very careful. I try to clean between my fingers, particularly on these loose edges, light tearing. Gonna veer away from that as much as possible so you don't snag it with the eraser and cause a big rip. That would be very, very tragic. Eraser again. Getting quite a bit of gunk off. Again, it's going to be slow. This is not one to rush. Looking at the Beast and Angel, there's a little bit on there. Yellow shows the dirt pretty good. You can see we're not pulling yellow, we're pulling definite crud off the top. I noticed on the top corner here there's some true foxing, so that won't come off with the dry clean. Go in the code box here. I think the bigger creasing around here and right up here by the X-Men might need a light tacking iron. Plenty of crud. Alright, obviously this big spot remains, but I think that's the majority of what's left that I want to try to pursue. So let's give this thing a wipe off. Now with my Mr. Clean sheets, you know, when I have a really delicate one, I'll roll it up into a much smaller area, and then I'll kind of fold it. I have to do a lot more swiping with this, but I don't want to, again, catch any of those edges. And that marble creasing, that would be, you can see all the eraser bits there that we're getting up. And marble chipping, definitely don't want to catch one of those and make it worse. So much more fine. Missed the E in the magneto here. I actually grab my micro eraser so I can find it. I have a feeling this is not going to dry clean off, but we can at least do our due diligence and try. Yeah, I think whatever that is going to be the same goopies that are in there. It's very shiny, so that makes me think it's either sugar on top from somebody's candy-laden fingers, or it's gonna be grease. Some kind of lacquer or urethane or something. If that's what it is, it definitely ain't gonna be dry cleaning off. So, all right, dry cleaning the back down the spine is my personal favorite spot. Typically very gratifying. Now the open edge, I usually extend the eraser out, and I'm just going to kind of drag it along the pages and just see if I can get some of that clear edge dirt off the comic. Cannot do this if there's that marble chipping, but thankfully the back edge is clean here. So. Definitely keeping my eye out for any tears or anything that might cause some issues along the edge here. You can definitely tell from the color of the eraser bits that we're for sure getting dirt off as we do this. There's a little bit of tear right there, so I'm going to be very careful around that. Put my finger on it so I don't snag it with the eraser. That little tear right there. Okay, back to the rest. All right, I was down here before we did that. Whatever that little bit of dirt is. Remove the soiling from my eraser tip. And in the pictures, there was definitely fingerprinting along back here. You can definitely see it in the glare. It's harder to see top down, but I'm going to try to polish as much of that as I can. And some of what I thought was ink transfer looks like it's coming off, so that's positive. Definitely a light fingerprint in here. I'm just going to give it a quick full area wipe off here. as long as I'm holding it here, we can see it in the glare there, especially if you kind of look over by the Beast and Gene, you can just see that there's just a lot of really light wrinkling going on, even up through the X there. It's not quite as smooth as it could be, so that was true on the back as well. There was a good amount of lighter creasing down over here and then over in here. And then up in here is where you could see the dull spots and the glare from the fingerprints. There's a little bit of a light tear there, so I'm going to be relatively careful. But I am generally pleased with how the crud is coming off the back here. It's coming off better than I thought it was going to. That spot. I don't think I'm going to be able to make that look a whole lot better, unfortunately. The fingerprints I think we've reduced the severity of. You can have much heavier fingerprints at much higher grade, so I think that that's okay. Again, I'm going to be very careful around that tear and that chip. That further. There's a little bit of it left, but it looks a lot better, I think. And a lot of this discoloration down here is actually a light foxing on the bottom corner. And so in principle we could bled treat that away, but I think on this book, given all the creasing, there's no marginal gain and only a whole lot of marginal risk. So that's a good idea. All right, so I'm going to take a pause here from the video and get my stuff to attempt that spot. All right, here is our post-press send-off view of this copy of X-Men #1. The good news is all of the light wrinkling is out, so I took some pretty detailed before and after pictures, but particularly up here, there was a lot of light wrinkling. On the back, there was a lot of light wrinkling. All that got cleared up. The one thing that didn't get fixed is the one thing that I called out in the prior video, which is right there. You can see that there's this faintest line that runs right here through Cyclops. And to get that out, we'd have to do some pretty exhaustive ironing and tack iron with the roller ball. And I asked the owner what they thought about it, and we both decided it probably wasn't worth the risk, because if you look up here, you can see that there's some tearing on that top staple, and it looks like it's starting to come horizontal under the staple. And so I don't want to risk blowing that staple to get what is really truly a incredibly minor indent out of that cover. And so because of that, I think we're going to leave that one very light indent. Everything else looks great or is color breaking. You know, like obviously up here, you'll be able to see that line in the glare of the photo, because it is a pretty clear color break through the X-Men all the way over. Other than that, though, pressed out really nice. A little disappointed that this didn't come off, but all things being considered, that's kind of quite a minor little thumbprint there. And so we're gonna hope that we did our diligence and got out a lot of that light creasing and light bending, and we'll send it on off to CGC. As always with these really big books, I put them you know, fully protected in a second Mylar bag like this. And so I have this thing in its silver fullback Mylar, and then we're going to slide that into a Golden Age one. And that way, you know, it's protected front and back, you know, top and bottom. And as well as it has this nicer, larger perimeter. So if this thing does get binged or dropped, it's that outer board that's going to take the blunt of it, not the actual comic book. And so that's why I like these Gerber Mylites. So with that, you know, we're going to send this one on off to CGC. It'll seem like only moments to you, but for me, it'll be probably a couple of weeks by the time this makes it there through the full process and I find out the result. So keep your fingers crossed for me. All right, folks, this one's a big one. And as you know, I think it's very important before cracking a comic book like an X-Men #1 out of its slab that you very carefully weigh the pros and cons, the risks, the upsides, the potential downsides. You know, a comic book like that, it would be tragic if somebody dropped it along the way, whether that be the presser, whether that be the CGC grader, or whether it be one of the many postal carriers delivering it from the owner to me and then to CGC and then back. You know, there's a lot of hands involved, there's a lot of points of contact, and things can go wrong. And even if nothing goes wrong and it just stays the same grade, that's a very expensive round trip. And so you really want to, you know, kind of think it through, double check what the odds are, pay attention to the defects. But in this case, the owner is ecstatic, as this copy of X-Men #1 bumped a full grade point from a 4.0 to a 5.0. And in addition to that, it went from off-white pages to off-white white pages. And so that is a increase in the page quality as well. And so this one to me, I think, is a pretty solid, exceptional Top Comics pressing win. And I'm truly ecstatic that the owner was able to bring this upgraded copy of X-Men #1 home. So with that, hopefully you've enjoyed the video here. Please do thumbs up and like the video. Click that subscribe button to join the channel. Reach out on Facebook or Instagram, or drop a comment down below. So thank you, keep on collecting, and hopefully with this copy, you'll believe the exclamation Excelsior.